hello, lovelies, and welcome to another episode. I am so excited for today's topic. We are talking about how to reset and change our whole life by changing our patterns. I'm going to walk you through three very specific patterns that I usually see playing out in people, in partners, specifically in the relationship, and in their life in general. And then I'm going to show you how to deconstruct those patterns, how to reprogram them, deprogram them, if you may, and then how to create a new set of perspective, views, ways. I'm going to show you different things to put in place so that your life could feel very differently fairly quickly. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to teach you first the three different patterns. So the first one is lack. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of feeling like you don't have enough, not being enough, not getting enough, not doing things fast enough, just the not enoughness thing, the lack mentality. Nothing's ever good enough, nothing's enough in all of the different ways. Now, with this pattern, what happens is that we feel like something's broken. We feel disconnected. There's like a separateness, not belonging, not fitting in, not being fully who we want to be, who we think we are, or who we would like to be, because we're not in touch with our awesomeness. So there's this disconnect there, separateness between our higher self, our awesome core, the core brilliance of who we are, and how we experience ourselves and how we show up, and also disconnected from our higher power, from our partner. So the whole thing's a big separation and a big disconnect. So that creates a sense of and feelings of loss and grief and sadness and just not fitting in, feeling alone, lonely, all those kinds of feelings. And then as a result, what we do to deal with those feelings is that we might numb, we might judge, we might worry about what's fair, what's not fair. We're very indignant, right? That kind of perspective and experience. And this triggers the flight defense mechanism where we escape. Right. So the numbing makes sense. And however we do that, we might do it by binge watching Netflix, by being on our devices, by numbing with substances, overeating, whatever we do, right? Even overworking, over exercising, over shopping, like any of the things. This is where the addictions kind of play in. So that's pattern number one, the lack mentality or the lack ego pattern. So, and I said it like that because the ego is the one that's creating kind of the stories and the perspective on all of this. The way that we choose to look at things, it's going to filter everything. It's going to create our identity and our perspective and our experience, our reality. So that's where we're going to use to connect to the next part of today's conversation. So that ego pattern of lack has that perspective of not being good enough, not fitting in, nothing's enough, like that kind of stuff. And our identity of like not measuring up, being small, not being valuable, things of that nature. Okay, so that's number one. The second pattern is the attachment pattern. Now, there is a tricky thing with the word attachment when it comes to personal development and this world. And in that we want to be attached, we want to have attachment, we want to have a good attachment, a secure attachment to our loved ones. So there's such a thing as we seek attachment on one hand. On the other hand, I'm sure that if you've been doing any personal development work, you're familiar with this idea that we want to detach from things. We don't want to cling to stuff. Right? So it's two very different concepts. We want to have that connection, that attachment, but also we don't want to be attached to things or to want to be we don't want to be attached to outcomes, right? So the word attachment is being used in slightly different ways. So use your discernment here. And in this context, we're not using it as the connection aspect of it. We're using it as being attached to an outcome, attached to ways things be in a certain way. So what happens is that then we want to have things play out a certain way, be a certain way, show up a certain way. We attach to how things should be. We have expectations. With that comes all kinds of limitations, number one. And number two, it creates all kinds of feelings like resentment, letdown, anger, disappointment, those kinds of feelings. And then what happens is that we deal with that by becoming demanding that people apologize, that people owe us things. We own other people. We have poor boundaries. We're all over the place with these things. And we have this idea that things should be a certain way. And we force things in that regard. Or we have these expectations and this disappointment and this judgment going on. And the way that we show up with the defenses with this one is the fight, right? So we assert ourselves too strongly. It's almost aggressive. It's not necessarily assertive in a good way, that we assert over, power over, we control, right? Or we manage, which is a little similar to the next one, but there's a nuance here that I'm going to describe. The next one is called pattern number 3 is called the control pattern. This one has to do with believing that we have to make things happen. So it's not necessarily it's being attached to an outcome, how things should be, like the first, like the one before. But this one has to do with we have to make things happen. We are in charge of everything. If it wasn't for us, we are responsible for things. We take on over other people's things. This is where the codependence really shows up. And with this one, the feelings are fear, anxiety, worry, nervousness, like those kinds of feelings. And the way that we deal with that is by being controlling, micromanaging, overfunctioning, taking care of everything, like that kind of stuff. And the defense mechanism that goes with this also is the freeze. So if we're controlling, managing, really over orchestrating, we get ourselves stuck. Okay? So those are the 3: lack, attachment, and control. And let's see, I think I covered the nuanced enough for between attachment and control. So attachment, again, just to make sure that I'm being clear, is having an attachment to an outcome. Control is about I have to make it happen. Right? So feeling like you're responsible for it, like it's in your sphere of control. The other one's like you have the expectations of others too. Like they could make it happen and you want to be a certain way. So that's the little difference there. Okay, so if those are the 3 ego patterns, then I'm sure you could probably already see how this plays out in your relationship, right? So let's run them through. So if I have the lack mentality one, no matter what my husband does, it's never going to be good enough, let's say. How he does the chores, what kind of gifts he gives, how he shows up in his parenting, how he dresses, I don't know, whatever, right? Like no matter what the partner does, it's never going to be good enough. There's always something that we could find faults with. They're never going to measure up. That's the lens that we're keeping on. And not just of the other person, but also of ourselves. So the same thing for us, right? No matter how much what we do and how much we do, it's never good enough. We feel like we could have done more, that we could have done it better, that it didn't fully land, that it didn't fully click, that we didn't do enough, that what we do is not good enough, those kinds of things. With that one, then I'm sure that you could imagine the state of being that we would be in a constant state of loss, like we never have what we need. Loneliness, not good enoughness, just sad. And then we deal with that by however we deal with that. The attachment one, when we are attached to the outcomes, we want things done a certain way, by a certain time, our way. We're entitled. we all know the people, like, this is how people should behave. This is what's appropriate. This is what people should do. This is what you should do for me. This is what I should be getting, right? Like that kind of stuff. This is what my partner should be doing for me. This is what a husband does. My husband should take out the garbage every night by 8 o'clock. I'm just making this stuff up. So that kind of like really attached to how things should be. And then with the control, that one's a little trickier because we know that we can't get what we want, then we do it. We overdo it, right? So we make sure the garbage goes out, or we nag the heck out of our husband partners to go do it, right? We're on top of it as opposed to just that's their chore. That's for them to take care of. Like we're overseeing, over managing, over orchestrating. They might do a chore and we go behind them fixing it or redoing it. Or we didn't even ask for help because we do it better. So we do it all. But so when we operate from that place and we are fearful that we're going to be let down, then we step into it. We're constantly doing it. This is where the overwhelm, the anxiety, the stress, the chaos, all that stuff kind of comes in because it's too much, right? We can't take care of all, and then it takes a toll. So that's just more targeted or more applied to how it might show up in your relationship. And so what happens is that when we have those scripts and those stories playing out and those way of processing those filters processing our experience, that's what we see, right? If that's how we look at things, that's the reality that we're creating. Somebody else might look at the same thing very differently and not even see what you're talking about. Very common, right? So I work with so many couples and I hear so many stories that it's really funny. Like when one couple might be okay with, another couple's totally not okay with. So like I see it play out by just comparing couples and also within the couple, right? Between the partners. What gets me might not necessarily get my husband and vice versa, for sure. Right? So what we want to do with this is be aware of what our filter is. See if we could identify which one of these patterns plays out for us. We could have one or all three of them. And then what we want to do is kind of take a step back and take a look at this. Okay, so these are my patterns, or this is my pattern, or this is my prevalent pattern. Probably have a little bit of all three, but this is my main one, my go-to. And if that's my pattern, how is that informing my identity and how I show up and how I filter everything and how I'm creating my reality? Bam, people, right? And then if that's my identity, what kind of, and that's the reality that's being created. What kind of circumstances am I living in? I'm sorry if that was a 2 by 2. This is how we create life. This is how we create our life. So let me say that again. The patterns that we have, the ego patterns, the defenses, how we choose to look at those things, those three things that I mentioned, created a filter. That's how we experience and perceive our life and our interactions and our situations. Therefore, that set of perception and experiences creates our reality. That's what our reality is, which then in turn inform our circumstances. What are we creating? What is our life like? So now, that's part one of what I wanted to present. Now we're going to go into part two. If that's the case, what do we not like about our current reality, our circumstances? Do we want a better job? Do we want something different in our relationship? Do we want something different from our fitness, from our wellness, from our health? Do we want something different in our home? Do we want something different in the impact that we have in the world? Like what are some other things that might come up? How do we want to improve our circumstances? So then the next piece would be to identify that. Like, if this is my reality, how do I step it up? What is the next level for me? Like, what would I want it to be like? Okay, and then from that, with desired reality, if that is the reality that I want, This is the tricky part. Ready? Who do I need to be able to create that? Would I have the same patterns? No, I wouldn't. Because if I had those patterns, I won't be able to create that reality. So that's the trick, right? We have to change those patterns. That's what we're getting to. And so if this is the desired reality, what kind of person would create that kind of reality? How would I want to be? How would I have to be able to create that? So what I would want you to do when we finish listening to this, or as we go, if you're watching this video, recording, audio, whatever, you could pause it and then just follow those prompts, right? Journal a little bit or just ponder and think about the answer to what I'm asking. And okay, this is the circumstances. This is what I want to change. This will be the desired reality. If that is desired reality, who would I need to be able to create that? That's what we're playing with right now. If that's what we want to create, then that's who I would have to become. Right? So think about it in that way. Now, we're going to juice this up. Ready? Next level of that is if my future self came to visit me, what advice, suggestions, hacks, inspiration, observations would they make and offer? What would they tell me to do differently? What would they say, girl, you got to be done with that. That's not going to get you anywhere. To get to where we got, this is what I did different back then. This is what you need to do to be able to get here now, right? Assuming that your future self got where you wanted to get. So the future self from the desired reality, let's put it that way, so then we don't mess ourselves up. So that future self is going to give you advice. So what you need to do now to be able to create the thing that you want. So now we're going to combine, okay, who do I think I need to be? Plus the future self is going to come to visit us and tell us, right? So we're going to play with that information. We have to think about, okay, so what does that mean for me for today, for the next near future? Like, what are the changes that I need to make? So all of that is part 2 of today. So the first part was identifying the patterns. The second part is assessing the realities, where we are, what kind of circumstances we have, what do we want to change, what do we want to create, who do we want to become, who do we have to become to make that happen. Our future self is going to juice us up and give us some tips and hints to help us out. And then we're going to go create the new reality. So that's part 3 of today. Ready? So we're going to dive into that right now. So after you did all of that, after you played with, paused, you thought about this, you journaled, whatever you had to do to kind of get into that state, even if you had to meditate on this, kick it around, massage it. So really sit with, ooh, these are my patterns. This is what I'm creating. This is what my reality is. These are my perceptions. That's the reality that they're creating. This is the identity that I have right now about myself and my situation. And this is what I want to create. And this is who I need to become to be able to create that. And this the suggestion and the hint, the tip that my future self gave me. Wow. So now what? So now we're going to go create it. We're going to use all the information that we have. What's the reality that we want to create and who do we need to become? We're going to marry that. We're going to create something. So the first thing is this. Ready? Okay, so if this is who I need to become, what does that mean? What kind of identity is that? And to make this funner, we could give that new identity, that alter ego, a name. So think about, okay, so if I were to be this kind of person, what would be the title for that version of myself, for that identity? What do I want to name it? Right? So our last name is Viglucci. So part of mine has Gucci in it. So you could kind of see where I'm going with that, right? So hey, so just put something fun in there, step it up a notch, and think of the superheroes too out there, right? So like they have those alter selves, they're a new version of themselves, the version that has their powers, right? So something like that. So get creative, make it fun. So the new version of me, my alter ego, is this. So name it something cool, fun, interesting, exciting. And what are all the characteristics of this new version of you? Slash this other version of you, because as you probably already know, we have a lot of parts to ourselves, different aspects that we access, don't access, and we could show up with different versions of ourselves. And so the version of you that you want to show up with more and that you want to continue to develop, what's the name for that version, for that part? What is the alter ego name? So then what are all the characteristics of that part or well that new version of you, that new identity? What do they do? How do they dress? How do they speak? What do they like? How do they show up? How do they behave? What kind of things do they like? How do they step up their wardrobe? How do they do their daily routine differently? You see? New version, new identity. What does this new person do? Who are they? How do they show up? How do they speak? Who are they? Right? And so develop that. Have fun. Right? So if the new version of the new identity is a sporty person, does the sporty person sit on the couch watching TV 5 hours a day? Probably not, right? So what do they do differently? Not that you do that, and not that I do that, but I'm just saying, like, that's an example, right? Like a couch potato doesn't go with a sporty or adventurous person. So what does a sporty or adventurous person do? What kind of activities do they have after work or before work, or maybe for lifestyle, for work? Maybe that's part of their work. Maybe you change careers and to do something to that effect, right? So this is the universe is the limit here. Anything, this could apply to anything, however you like. So to go along with that, let's say that the new version of you is a more laid back, relaxed, easygoing, more feminine person as opposed to the go, 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 go getter and aggressive and assertive and go and make things happen kind of person. What would that version do differently? How would they structure their day differently? How would they just dress differently? How would they speak differently, interact differently, subscribe to things differently, right? Like commitments and things that they do and things that they entertain, things that they allow or that they engage in. You see? Very different. So create your new version of you. And I don't know if you've heard me in the past. Sometimes I have a hard time distinguishing what I say in podcasts and what I say in our membership. But you might have heard me in some context say things like that we're a big old habit. So everything about us is a habit. We make the choices and we do it over and over and over and over again. So I'm asking you now to do the opposite. Make different choices, and then we're going to do those over and over and over again until you're that version of yourself more consistently. And that's who you are. That's who you become, right? And another way to look at this is that we already are amazing and radiant and fabulous. Like our core self, the beingness that we are, is already amazing. But we put all these things, patterns and habits and ways of being on ourselves that cover our radiance, who we really are. And we show up with this limited ego-based, fear-based version of ourselves. And so what we're doing right now is we're deconstructing and peeling all the muckiness, and we are showing up with our radiance more, right? So this is the next fun part. How do we get rid of all that muck? How do we change all the patterns? How do we undo the current identity that was so ingrained? This is who we think we are, right? We've done it so much every second of every minute of every hour of everything of our life that we think that this is who we are, but it isn't. This is a construction. So we could create something different. And the way to change that, we're going to be tricky about this, because if we just go about like, I'm going to do all this stuff differently, right? So the thing that we just designed and we try to implement it, it's not going to be so easy just like that, because it's not ingrained yet. It's not a pattern. It's not a habit yet, right? So we're going to automatically default to what we know. And so the ego is going to be like, oh, heck no, we're not going to let go of that easily. What are you talking about? This is the death of me. I don't want to die. This is who I am. I can't be something different. That's what the ego will say and will sabotage your efforts. It wouldn't let you integrate or implement something else. And so we're going to go behind the scenes and undo the patterns and the habits in a different way so the ego doesn't realize that you're doing it. So we're not going to go heads to heads with the ego and fight. We're not going to say, well, we're not going to talk like this anymore. We're going to talk like this now. Yes, that's nice in theory, but hard to do. Yes, we could be intentional. Yes, we could show up differently with intentionality every day and mindfulness and all the things that I talk about all the time. So of course we could do it, but that's a lot of work, right? So we had to be on all the time. We could do that and be more easy about it, but then we could also go behind the doors and undo stuff underneath, if you may. And what that looks like is that we're going to deprogram the patterns in a way that the ego doesn't know that we're doing it. So we're not going to go confront it and fight with it about what we're doing every minute of the day, but we're going to go through the back door and we're going to do the things. And the ego's going to be like, oh, before you know it, a new pattern is in place and the ego didn't even realize it, that we changed it. And so what I created for this is a way of disrupting or interrupting patterns, behaviors, and things that we normally do so that by doing that, we automatically are deprogramming all the stuff that normally would drive our patterns, our behaviors, our routines. Let me say that a little bit better. We are wired a certain way. We have behaviors, we have speech mannerisms, we have thought patterns, we have all kinds of patterns. Everything, like I said before, everything's a pattern, everything's a habit. So if we start doing things differently, I'm gonna tell you in a second where I'm getting at with this. If we start doing things differently and undoing that pattern, putting a different patterning in place, that where we're getting rewired, different aspects of us show up to deal with the change. And different thought patterns have to come up. Different things show up, different feelings, different things that we have to do. Our body might need to move differently. We might have to stretch in particular ways in our either routines or in how we do things or in what we're doing with our bodies or in how we're thinking about something. And in all of those micro changes, we're deconstructing the old structure, you see, and we're depatterning. So we're not going for the ego. We are slowly melting it down, if you may, or reforming it to suit us to the new identity. And so the mechanism for doing this might sound complicated, maybe, but so I created a fun, easy way to do this so that we could depattern in a fun way without doing all this psychobabble, all this potentially hard work. And that is by doing a 30-day challenge, let's say, or a 90-day challenge, whatever floats your boat, or 75 hard, or 75 medium, or 75 soft, whatever, right? Look them up if you're not familiar with. Any kind of challenge that you institute will help you focus on something else, go about that thing differently, and access different parts of you to be able to accomplish the thing. So even the most minute of challenges that you choose to do will trigger different aspects of you to be able to stay on task, to be able to twist yourself to do this new thing. And in that, there's the deep patterning. And in that, you're bypassing your ego, like I was saying before, and you're setting yourself up to be able to install that new identity that we just created. Bam. So, couple of things with this. I want you to check out the 30-day challenges list that I created. Go to my website, and I also am going to put a link in the show notes in the description here, metrorelationship.com/monthly themes. And look for the June one, which is the 30-day challenges list. So you could subscribe to that. You could download it. It's a one sheet that gives you, I think, 50 options of challenges. And they go from as simple as I'm cutting out sugar or sweets to something else, whatever, like more complicated. And so, or you can make your own, but it's fun to look at a list of ideas. Why not? So you can check that out. And plus, it comes with a prescription of how to play with this sheet and these ideas and this concept. So you get a little email sequence to help you along to install this and play with this idea. So that's one thing, or you could look up challenges anywhere else. But the idea is to play with the challenge because that's the easiest way to kind of go deconstructing things and paving the way for something else to be installed. Okay. So that's how you're interrupting the patterns, deconstructing, and creating that space, that malleable substance, so that new rewiring could happen and new things could be installed. Okay. New software into your hardware, if you may. Now you could say, okay, so all the parts of me are more open. Now I'm receptive to creating something different. You see, this is where we're getting to. This is the third fun part. And that is that now you say, okay, so if this is the desired reality that I want to create, then what do I need to put in place to create that reality, aside from who I need to be? You see, this part has to do with actually taking the action steps to make the new reality come true, or for it to manifest more easily in the concrete part of it. And so you're going to say, okay, so my desired reality is this. You're going to flesh it all out. What are the aspects of this new reality, of this new circumstances? What do things look like? What changes do you have to make? Do you have to do anything to your home? Do you have to do anything at work? Anything with your team? Anything with your services? Anything with your parenting? Anything with your physical appearance, with your health, with your hobbies, with your interests, with your community, with your environments, whatever. I don't know, whatever's in your life. So go through all the things that would be different. And like I usually like to say, we're not going to do all of the things in one shot, right? So first capture everything, and then narrow it down to 2 things that you want to target. And what are the next action steps in each one of those things that you could take to start creating the flavor of that aspect in your new reality? So you're going to map out, what's this new life look like? What would things look like? And start taking steps toward making the things happen, and start with just 2 areas so it's not overwhelming. Alrighty. So I hope that made sense. So we're deconstructing that, we're de-patterning. And by the way, I like to do this work in the month of June, which is the month of Father's Day. And it has to do with being disciplined and structured and having systems, right? So that's a translation of fathering. So fathers, usually the fathering, the masculine energy. It could be moms doing that too, right? So the masculine parts of the caregivers to ourselves and our children provide the masculine aspects and characteristics. And those have to do with discipline, with structure, with systems, with methodology, right? So how do we do things? And that's what we're giving to ourselves this month, to refather ourselves. So whatever things we didn't get growing up that had to do with security, with stability, with safety, and we have wounds around those, by doing this work that I just offered, we're giving that to ourselves, right? We create the routines, we create the patterns. They're not dictated by some phantom subconscious thing that's driving our lives. We're going to take charge of it. So we're going to deprogram all that stuff, and we're going to create what we want. And we're going to give ourselves this structure, the discipline, the stability, the security, the safety, by us doing something consistently through the challenges, you see? So a very simple, fun activity, way of doing this work that's doing all kinds of things. You're doing all the healing behind the scenes at the deeper level with the refathering, reparenting yourself with the masculine energy. So reparenting by doing refathering. Plus, we're making it practical. We're actually creating something that's the results of the changes that we're doing. So we're working underneath with the healing. We're working at the top with the practical, with deep patterning. We're changing our whole life. So bam, there we go. That's what I promised at the beginning of this episode. We're going to repattern, reset. We're going to change our whole life. And we're getting ready for part 2 of this year. So that's what we're doing. We're repatterning so that we could create something new, reset the whole thing with something as fun as just 30-day challenges. Now, if you think that you need support with this, our membership has pretty cool, deep masterclasses and deep dives that help you address all of the fears, all of the patterns, emotional and mental, right? So the mind and the heart, the emotional body and the mental body, the thinking patterns, the emotional patterns, whatever language you want to use with this, and the masculine, the feminine. We have the dual work there for that, and we go deep into the deep patterning, into the changing the things, and it has a bunch of practices, a bunch of exercises, worksheets, workbooks, beautiful workbooks to help you do the work, videos. And the membership, you have access to those right off the bat. You have access to everything, but those are the ones that will be applicable to what we're talking about today. And you get our monthly videos and all of the emails, weekly emails to support your journey, to give you homework for the weekend, all kinds of yummy stuff. So if this resonates and if you want additional support, feel free to just subscribe to that. It's only $29 a month. You get all of this deeper work that you could do at your own pace and your own time, and you have access to all of our content. And if you want more personal, of course, we're here to do the individual work as well. You could check out working with us privately. You could just start with an initial session and see if we're a good fit. All right, so that's there for you. I'm also going to put all the resources in the, again, show notes description, so you could see all the blog posts, access the challenge, maybe some other videos. I'll see what we have that's free that you could access now to support you. Okay, my loves, hopefully that was helpful. That was a whole process. That's like a whole process. So you're welcome. Hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that you play with this. Give it a good shot so that you'll see the benefit of reprogramming everything and setting yourself up for an amazing second part of this year and a beautiful reset, a new beginning all around. Okay, have a fabulous one. I will see you at the next one. Bye.